Okay, so there's this gorgeous historical era that literally nobody talks about. Like, I'm talking criminally underrepresented. The natural form era, 1877 to 1882-ish. And it is stunning. Now you might be thinking, wait, isn't that just the bustle era? Everybody does bustle. Yes, they do. And they totally forget about the slim, natural silhouette shoved in between the first bustle era with its copious bows and ruffles and dropped bustle, and the tailored, structured second bustle era with our favorite tea tray butt action. It gets completely overshadowed by its more dramatic siblings. I mean, who doesn't love a giant false rump? But here's the thing, these dresses, they're like the elegant middle child of the late Victorian period. The tailored, sleek cuirass bodices that fit snugly over the hips. The gorgeous tiers of drapes on the skirts that are pulled back or hobbled to create a slim line. The sleek silhouette that clings to your front and flares out into trains in the back like a fabulous silk mermaid tail. Y'all, it's fabulous. So today, we're giving this era the attention it deserves. And I'm making a dress based on this fashion plate from 1881, the white one, which is hardcore giving My Fair Lady at the Races, only 20 years earlier, so I've unofficially dubbed this the Eliza Doolittle if she were age appropriate to Henry Higgins dress. Let's get into it. The first thing we need to do is pre-shrink this linen because y'all, this came to me so loosely woven. Hello! First thing we need to do to build this dress is to build the foundation skirt. In this period of time, everything was tacked onto one skirt. There is no other way to get the shapes that we need without tacking them all to a single drape of fabric. I'm not going to reinvent the wheel here, even though I don't have a foundation skirt from the 1870s and early 1880s. I do have a foundation skirt for the late 1880s, which I've used several times on this channel to create the underskirt of my bustle looks. This is from the Mantua Maker Patterns. Unfortunately, this website is no longer live. I'm not sure what has happened in the last couple of years. So instead of redrafting an entire foundation skirt, we're just gonna take this and narrow it down to the proper widths for the natural form era. The way you tell a foundation skirt from a regular skirt, like an underskirt, is the pieces and the way the pieces are shaped. You're looking for 3 pieces, a front piece, a side piece, and a square back piece. If you see that in any given 19th century pattern, it's a foundation skirt. So I have listed on my pattern, this skirt is about 7 to 8 inches too short for me without a panel on the bottom. I'm 5'3", so it's that short on me. If you find this pattern, you're gonna need to lengthen it considerably. Part of the problem I only just realized is that I shortened the skirt by 3 inches like I normally do for any given skirt pattern, and then I forgot I did it. So I only had to make it 4 inches longer. But we also have to deal with the top of the back piece because a yoke is supposed to go there. Now we need to narrow the skirt towards the natural form widths. This is 18 inches wide. I'm going to reduce it to 15, but all we'll do is fold it to keep the original pattern intact. Note that I recently took a class with Costume on foundation skirts, and that's where I'm getting a lot of this information. It was focused specifically on the second bustle era, but this is a technique that originated during the natural form era. It was the best costume class I have taken, full stop. I highly recommend checking out this company, not sponsored, and especially this foundation skirt class if you're into the late Victorian period, because it is going to save you so much time and money. I only used about 2.5 yards of 45-inch fabric and didn't have to do any piecing. The front and sides of this have been completed. I've made this exact skirt 3 times on this channel already, so I don't feel like I need to show this again. However, the back of this is going to be very different than the other ones that we've made, so let me show you what we're going to do to take this underskirt and make it a foundation skirt. Starting with a bum pad. There's not really a size guide for these natural form bum pads, so we're just winging it here, and you'll probably have to play around to find the size that you like. The important thing for natural form is that the pad should be longer than it is wide. My finished dimensions I think were 7 by 10, and you'll want to round the bottom off so you don't have a square butt. You sew this up like a normal pillow, leaving an opening for stuffing. Clippy, 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 clippy. Once it's ironed, stuff it tuft it, and sew up the top. You may have heard folks talk about how rapidly fashions in the late Victorian era changed, and the natural form really highlights that. It's this weird little pocket of fashion where the millennials were like, we love big floofy butts, and the Zoomers just looked at them and were like, no, we want to be slim. And then hilariously, like 5 years later, they were like, oh, never mind. Let's bring those big butts back. And even though it's called natural form, it really isn't any less structured or false than the bustle eras that bookend it. It's just slimmer. And also trains, like even for every day. That's one of the reasons I'm opting for a dress from 1881, because of all of the years, that one tends to have less trains than the others. One of the features of a foundation skirt is that it has the structure built in. So if it's a second bustle era foundation skirt, there is no separate bustle. You put hoop wire in, tack it down, and then you can change it out and put it in different skirts. Similar concept here. Note that this wasn't the only method, and there are many other types of skirt supports that were used in this period of time. We're only cracking the surface here. It's a 20-minute YouTube video. Again, we have to wing this. I'll measure from the bottom of the pad down to about the back of my knee. You don't want to go any lower than that. That's a 14-inch difference on my body, so we'll put the second wire halfway between those 2 points. You'll want twill tape or grosgrain ribbon that's 1/4 of an inch wider than your hoop boning, whatever you choose to use. Here's it sewn down. You want a tape sewn to each side seam so you can adjust your wires. This hoop wire has 2 holes punched in it. We're going to sew into those holes to keep it in place. I did find this very cumbersome and it twisted, so note that eventually I undid it and just basted the casings closed instead. It held up pretty well. Have my little cushion. It is a fairly little cushion. It's about only the size of my face. In this particular period of time, we're not looking for a big old bustle on the back. We're just looking to sort of hold the skirts out over our backside. I have a sway back. I don't think that I need that much support, but if you are very straight, then you may want to make a bigger cushion. All right, let's get this tacked on and then we can maybe do a fitting. Cuirass bodice, mock-up number 1. Not too bad. So I just took my ball bodice that I used last year to make the lobster gown and I extended it down. I just sort of used the width of my corset and measured on my body and sort of extended it to those measurements. I'm surprised at how well it worked. I thought this was going to be a disaster. So really, the only problem is now that the skirts are just way too big. That's okay, because it's much easier to take things in than it is to let them out. I suspect that I should be able to take most of the width of the skirt out at the side seam, which should make life a lot easier. So let's get this off and do a little fiddling. Okay, as I'm editing this, I realized I really glazed over this while I was making the outfit, but the design of this bodice is really what makes natural form natural form. It's very tight and it hugs your body from the neck all the way down to the hips. Some of them came to points in the front, like I'm doing here, but also a lot of them were just rounded down by the hips, like this one. If you see a bodice that looks like this, you instantly know that it is natural form. Both the first bustle and second bustle eras have to have a looser bodice over the hips to accommodate for the bustle. This side has been taken in, this side has not. I also took it in about 1/2 of an inch between the center back and the side back panel because I thought it needed it as well. But I'm pretty happy with that. I want to leave it a little bit loose because we're gonna have more layers and thicker fabric, but I do need to modify the bottom edge a little bit because we really want this to come to a point and curve upward. No matter how many times I lengthen it, I can't get the angle right, so I'm gonna have to fiddle around with that a little bit. But it feels good. Like, didn't take me that long to figure this out for once. I used a pen to mark the hemline where I wanted, and then all that was left to do was snip it up and transfer it to my paper pattern. Meanwhile, it's time to pleat up the apron portion of our skirt. I'm using one of the designs from Fashions of the Gilded Age Volume 2 as a base for my apron sizes and pleating. I don't recommend that you purchase this particular costuming book. It's got a lot of good information in it, but the majority of the dress patterns that are in there that aren't outerwear or something special are one-size patterns without the convenience of a grid. I suspect that the first volume is much better, but since the publisher or the author or both are currently gatekeeping the f*** out of that book, I honestly Can't tell you. Borrow your friends, get it from the library if you must, but don't waste your money. To hold out the hem, you'll want to face the bottom of your foundation skirt. I'm opting for 2-inch horsehair braid, but this is only one of many options. Then we need to prep the pleats that go below the drapery. I've taken 2-inch strips of black silk and sewn them on by hand 3 inches from the bottom of my hemmed piece of linen. My math for the pleat strips, as usual, was totally off kilter, so I'll spare you the numbers and just know I had extra. Speaking of numbers, if you're enjoying this deep dive into another unappreciated era, please consider giving this video a thumbs up and saying hi in the comments. This really helps spread the word and get the video out to the equally curious. Also, thank you to all of my Ko-fi contributors for your continued support. Without you, I could not have built this costume, so thank you for all that you do. I've linked to my page below if you have the means and would like to contribute. Here's where we're at. So we've got the front and the back of the overskirt tacked down at the top and the sides. This will always be free and loose. We have the first row of pleats. This is a 9-inch long pleat. Why 9 inches? Because I had a very long, awkward strip left over from cutting the back and the front apron down, and when I hemmed the bottom of it, it was 9 inches. That, my friends, is true historical accuracy right there. Using what we already have instead of cutting and wasting fabric. The center front is box pleated like the instructions suggested, but for the side I just pleated it upwards until it looked the way that I wanted it to look. The back is gathered, and then where we ran gathering stitches, it's gathered and sewed down to the foundation skirt. The bottom is loose though. We'll tack that down after we get all of the pleating in. One downside to doing the foundation skirt method with the wires and the ties is that it has been kind of a bear. I tried twice to sew some of the seams that should have been easy on the machine, and both times they failed. So between all of the pleating and everything on double layers of fabric and the wires and the ties, there's just too much going on to really feed it through the machine in a way that's easy and not completely hair pulling. So we have been tacking all of this down by hand. We have 2 more rows of pleating to put on. I'm gonna work on 1 row of pleating today, which is the middle row. It's pretty simple. Once that's done, I will check back with you, and then we can deal with the hard stuff, the bottom pleating. Also, I 86'd the pillow. It looked great on the dress form, but when I put it on my body with the corset and the petticoat, it looked too much like a bustle. In the research, there tend to be more pillows than there are even the wires and the ties, so it is more accurate to have a pillow, and frankly, many of you probably don't have a sway back like me, and you probably will want the pillow. And now, I have a new method of violence for people I don't like. Please excuse the Hades makeup. That's the thing about fall. So much to film, so little daylight. I have the skirt on my body. This is a look. I want to be able to show you the problem with my hem on my actual body because the dress form, she's just too short to do it justice. So let's lower the camera. Okay, we have 2 layers of ruffles. Oh yeah, and a little ruffly back here. This will look better once it's all gathered back up. But this is exactly what I wanted to show you. So these are very similar in length. This one is about 1 inch shorter than this one. That was intentional. So the bottom ruffle is going to be 1 inch longer than this one. But as you can see, where this ends right here is higher up than where the bottom of this ends. So it's going to have to be longer in the back than it is in the front. I was thinking a little bit about it last night as I was sewing the middle ruffle, and I think the easiest way to do it is to sew the 2 ruffles separately. That way, if we have a little extra, which I did with the middle ruffle, we won't have to like stop what we're doing and undo a bunch of seams. I think that's going to be the easiest way to do it. You want your bottom pleating to stop at least ½ an inch above the hem of your gown. The consequential gap will be covered by the dust ruffle made of cheaper, replaceable, or washable fabric. I'm getting 10 inches, so that will be an 11.5 inch strip in the front with seam allowances and overlaps. The back is 14, so I'll cut a 15.5 inch wide strip. Then we'll prep the silk strips. When your strips are assembled and pleated, mark the edge where the bottom of your second pleats end. Then mark 1 inch above to allow for some overlap. Then it's just a matter of pinning the pleats onto the foundation skirt and then backstitching them in place. Given the weight and the amount of fabric flaps on this skirt, I found using a TV tray was the easiest and fastest way to sew. I moved my coffee table right up against the legs to pin the fabric in place to fight gravity, which is and always will be my biggest personal menace. All right, friends, now that our bottom pleating is done, This thing is so heavy. Ooh. Looks pretty seamless. Now we get to put on the dust ruffle, and then we can finally gather down and tack the back bustle. This will not be serving as a hat anytime soon. The last set of pleats, particularly the back, were a nightmare because I was battling gravity the whole time. So I'm going to try and sew the dust ruffle on the machine. Put your votes in the comments now as to whether you think I'm going to be able to manage to sew it on the machine or if I'm going to start crying and hand sewing it. Okay, wish me luck. I managed it. That's a first. So let's move on to the bodice construction, shall we? So this linen, because of its open weave, is distorting in all sorts of ways, and I'm having to rely on steam and gumption to get it to behave. Highly recommend basting the lining and fashion fabric on the side back curve. It's a pain to get perfect even with well-behaving fabric. I'm then going to baste it by hand before running it through the machine. Added benefit of keeping this dastardly linen where it needs to be. Well, y'all, it's looking pretty darn good. We are getting a little wonkiness in the center front right now, but I think that's partially to do with the fact that it's just pinned and partially due to the fact that it's just plain old thirsty for some structure, and one tiny layer of cotton sateen ain't gonna cut it. However, I'm pretty darn happy with the way this is turning out, so let's go cut out the center front and move on. Sleeve mock-up perfect, no notes. I'm opting for a 3/4 inch sleeve here, even though it's a day bodice. Like the low cut center front, this is a modification I'm making for climate. Low necklines and 3/4 inch sleeves are more for dinner or evening, but with this being linen, it's going to be my go-to on hot days for all Victorian events. Does this look like an airplane to anyone else? This is a standard sleeve construction with gathering stitches along the sleeve cap to ease it into the arm side. Normally, I like to sew the sleeves in by hand as it gives so much more control, but at this point, I'm less than a week away from my event and I'm in full-on Dickens panic mode, so I'm doing it on the machine to save my sanity. All right, this is where we're at with the bodice. It fits pretty well. We don't have much wrinkling at all. You will notice that I've got it pinned in the center front here, and I have it open at the top of the bodice. So what's gonna happen is once we get the lacing and all of the hooks and eyes sewn on the bottom of the bodice, we will make a little stomacher that's gonna go in the center here and cover up the lacing. I have not yet decided whether I'm going to go full 18th century and leave this as a proper stomacher, or if I'm going to tack it down somewhere on the bodice, but part of it will be pinned in the final costume. There is one thing I need to do. It's not so much a problem here in the back because it's so structured, but in the front, because this linen is just so darn wibbly wobbly, like it morphs like a malfunctioning transformer. So what I have to do is pin this to this while it's on my body so that I can get it basted and turn up the top, basically from the side seam over. In typical Victorian fashion, we're going to clean finish all the edges with piping. I opted to purchase piping, but you can use self fabric if you so desire. Typically, Natural Form is enthusiastic with the bows and the puffs and the trim, but this striped fabric is quite busy on its own. So, like the inspiration image, we're going to stick with the kiss method and keep the trim to a minimum. First, we'll add some silk pleated cuffs to the bottom of the sleeves. Then we'll make 4 silk bows, 2 big ones for the back of the skirt and 2 small ones for the outside of the cuffs. Just enough trim to tie everything together. I wore this on Saturday to Dickens on the Strand. It was so comfortable to wear, but I will say that linen did me dirty. If you notice in the reveal, the bottom of the bodice was super loose, and that was only after 1 day of wear. Linen was not the fabric for this level of structure, but I bought it for the stripes. It was so hard to find a fabric that matched this hat that I was gifted. Like literally it took me 2 years to find something, especially a black and white stripe in natural fibers that wasn't like $25 a yard. But you know, it's so striking and lovely, and I'm totally happy with it. If you enjoyed this video, why not check out another video in this series of underappreciated eras. Thanks for watching. I love y'all, and I'll catch you in my next video.